My name is Frank LaRue, and I'm the UN Rapporteur for Freedom of Expression around the world up to the 1st of August of 2014. I wanted to present today to you my last report, which I left drafted for the General Assembly of this same year, 2014, on children and freedom of expression. Let me say first why I chose this topic. I have always been an activist on both issues, on freedom of expression, because I've been a lawyer of human rights and a journalist. I've done radio. We now have a television program in our country, Guatemala, and I have a weekly column in the newspapers. But at the same time, I've always been an advocate of children's rights, and I have been working on children's rights, especially on prevention of violence against adolescents and youth, but also in all forms of children's rights. And I always, from the beginning of my mandate in 2008, I wanted to combine the two issues. Obviously, both of them are from human rights, and there should be an easy combination. But ironically, this link of freedom of expression and children has not been done as strongly as I would like. We always talk about participation of children, or we always talk about listening to children. The children have the right to be listened to. But we very seldom talk about the voice of children and how to enhance that voice. And this is what I tried to do in this report. How did I go about it? In all my reports, and this is a tradition I established as Rapporteur of Freedom of Expression, I had regional consultations. And I tried to build continental or broader than a continent consultation because I thought it was very important to move out of the four walls of the Palais des Nations in Geneva and to listen to the people and to look at what the good practices and the good traditions or the problems of society were in different parts of the world. And to try to reflect in my reports that reality, what I was listening from different activists and human rights defenders of different types. With children, I did exactly the same thing. We have done consultations, regional consultations and meetings of experts. We did a meeting of experts in Rio de Janeiro, which was very important. We have done consultations in Buenos Aires. We did a very, very special meeting, a consultation in Mexico City with experts from all Latin America. Then we have done one in Bangkok for people from Asia. We have made a consultation in Europe. We did one in Florence, and this was very well attended, and it was a mix of civil society organizations, but with leading experts on children's rights. And we have done a consultation in Johannesburg for Africa. This would give us a possibility of listening to voices from different continents. But the most important aspect, I think, are the two consultations we have done with children. One consultation in my own country, Guatemala, is the only time I allowed myself to do this, was with indigenous Mayan, indigenous young children from different ages, from 5 to 18, in the province of Totonicapán in the highlands. We brought in different children, which were basically all from the Quiché Maya ethnic region, and we broke them into 3 different age groups to participate. And we have done the same in Soweto, in Johannesburg, and the Soweto neighborhood, with the support of the Mandela Foundation, the Nelson Mandela Foundation. These 2 consultations of children have been very important for the drafting of this report, because it was the possibility of listening from children themselves. And in many cases, these children repeated that the biggest obstacle for them to speak out was the adults around them. Sometimes their parents, sometimes their teachers, sometimes other authorities, but that systematically, when they wanted to speak their mind and say what they thought, they were being silenced, because adults always feel that they have to speak among themselves, and that children don't have the maturity to speak. And here, now going into my report, the basic principle of my report is that when you look at the ICCPR and you look at freedom of expression, we must go to the preamble of the ICCPR, which quotes at the same time the Charter of United Nations that says the basic principles of freedom, justice, and peace in the world are based on the inherent dignity that all members of the human family have, and the equality of rights that inherent dignity brings with it. And this is where it doesn't mention that those rights, so the equality of rights, we all have equal rights. It doesn't mention that those rights can change from continent to continent. They cannot be different depending on what race, language, or religion we are, or what social origin. But especially they cannot be different depending on what age we have. Doesn't mean that children are small adults and therefore have to enjoy a reduced version of human rights. No, they're equal human beings like anyone else and enjoy the same dignity of being members of the human family like anyone else, and should have full enjoyment with no limitations of their civil and political rights. Now this is an important recognition because of course children are in a developing stage, yes, and that presents some basic needs. We all recognize that, and it represents basic protection. But it doesn't represent a reduction of their rights. We should not equate one with the other. And here's where I always remind people, especially in the mandate of freedom of expression, that we learn how to think and how to express ourselves from the earliest ages. If we're looking at freedom of expression, we're looking at the exercise in a way, not only of the two dimensions of freedom of expression, but in a way we're looking at three different rights: access to information, freedom of opinion and thought, and freedom of expression. And this is what the process that brings us to the learning stages of children. Children have a right to access information and to ask questions when they begin asking why. Why does this happen? Why was this done? Why? And oftentimes adults get tired and angry with the questions. They have a right to ask, and they have a right to get a scientific, serious, honest response to their questions, adapted to their age, of course. And secondly, they have a right to begin building their minds and to begin thinking and having an imagination and expressing themselves and having an opinion, even if they may make a mistake, like we all do at any age. And this can only happen if they have an encouraging environment. And this is where we have to provoke that encouraging environment. This is where my report focuses, obviously primarily on the state. The state has to create this environment and education system that encourages freedom of expression, whether it be in an oral way, whether it be in a written way, whether it be through art and any artistic expression, whether it be through any folkloric expression by the identity of peoples, or through any audiovisual or new technologies. Children have a right to find ways to express themselves, and the state has an obligation to facilitate this. I know that we're talking about resources, and I know that when the states cannot even guarantee access to potable water, people will say, how can they guarantee this? But oftentimes it's a question of attitude. What are the policies of the educators? What is the relationship between the teacher and the students? What is the atmosphere we generate at school? It is important not to allow that anyone will be bullied or will suffer reprisals or will be made fun of because they have an opinion or because they express their own identity and their own culture. This is a paramount issue, and of course it deals with non-discrimination in all ways. Non-discrimination on a gender basis. Men don't have more rights than women to express themselves. Non-discrimination on cultural, racial, or ethnic basis. No child should suffer discrimination at school or anywhere else. And all should have equal access to education and to the same quality of education. These are very basic principles, but very important to remind states. And all should have an atmosphere of promotion. Now, we must also remind the parents and the community. In the consultations with children, like I said, oftentimes I asked, and when I have worked with young people, whether they which of them eat in silence at home? And the big majority raised their hands. Because for adults, order is silence. When I believe in some degree of order, we all like good manners, there should be some discipline at home. But this doesn't equate to silence. On the contrary, the household should be the place where everyone expresses themselves. The table where everyone meets for the meal should be the place where everyone converses and discusses issues and can make decisions, family decisions. This is very important from the earliest of ages. And with gender equity and the possibility of everyone participating equally. This will enhance civic participation and democracy around the world. The second issue is the issue of protection. I believe in regulation for protection of children. I am the rapporteur for freedom of expression, but I think that it's important to regulate which are the contents that harm children. But I always put an element of caution. There must be a regulation of protection, and especially those that are criminal activity should be criminalized and persecuted. When we talk about child pornography, for instance, many times many states are happy with sort of only blocking a website. That's not the solution. The solution is to investigate and prosecute those responsible, which are part of organized crime and normally connected to sexual exploitation of children and trafficking of children. The state has to put full effort to eradicate impunity in these things. But at the same time, I caution against states that want to use child protection as an excuse to censor political debate or any other type of debate, including ideological, philosophical, or religious debate. There should be no censorship at all by the state, and much less states should not use issues of children to justify this type of censorship. The third issue, which I wanted to raise, which is very important, is that the state has to guarantee a positive aspect of protection and promotion of children asking questions, developing knowledge, but expressing themselves. And this brings us to the possibility of children accessing new technologies. I think it's important that all children feel they have equal opportunity to participate, equal opportunity to speak, equal opportunity to ask without any form of discrimination, but especially with no discrimination in terms of issues related to the education system, which should be guaranteed by the state. So children, when possible, like I said, should be able to use art, theater is very important, radio or little television. When it comes to internet, I think this is very important. Access to internet is a priority in the world for everyone, especially for the poorest sectors of the community. And here, children should be a priority within that. There is no possibility of development, economic and social development, without access to internet. The best experience I have found is in Uruguay, was a program called Ceibal, where every public school is a Wi-Fi server, and every child has a laptop from first grade to ninth grade, free by the whole schooling system. And this has guaranteed that all children learn at the earliest ages how to use internet, how to study in internet. They have the same public library that every school around the country, no matter how big, how small, or how urban or how rural. And they're now going into the chess Olympics nationally. This is what we would like to see every child to enjoy. Of course, internet has pitfalls, but the way to confront the dangers of internet is with education and prevention. It's not by hiding internet. Children will need that in the future, and it's much more important to have children growing with the use of internet and using it positively than trying to hide it from them. And finally, let me say that in the regulation of production of content, all states should have production of programs for children, healthy, educational, recreational programs for children, but all countries should make a space in their media for production coming from children. something they produce themselves, messages from children to the society. This is very important. If we learn how to listen from children, but if we give them especially the space to have a voice of their own, and if they believe they can do it safely, these are children that will not only exercise freedom of expression, but will exercise a democratic and active citizenship in the world.